everyone. I hope everyone has had an excellent week, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's show. So, this week I wanted to talk about, I'm just making sure that this is going live properly and trying to find that it is. Oh my gosh. Oh, no, I clicked on the wrong one. Okay. Yep, gotcha. So, this week has been filled with bizarre weather, an election, and more. So, I think I'm in love with New South Wales a little bit more. I was born and raised there for a fair chunk of my childhood. Actually, my whole childhood was in New South Wales. So, for me, it's been a bit of a roller coaster to think about, where I'm at with the state, whether I still look at it as a fondness or whether I look at it, as the state that down the education system in a rural area so badly that I needed to get out of the whole state in general. But that was my experience. Yours may have been different no matter where you are. So tonight we are going to talk about the amazing win at New South Wales, a war criminal to be charged, Christian fundamentalists and TERFS, Dean Andrews calling it out, what happened in light of the secret ministries and what will be done to stop it from happening again. What happens when a scammer sues? An IPA BIZZARE campaign. Now, if you don't know who the IPA is, it's the Institute of Public Affairs. It's something, one of Rupert Murdoch's little jaunts at right-wing think tanks. It's really a bizarre thing that he's doing. We're going to talk again this week about another place where pokies are gone. Each week I'm finding that different places are removing pokies from their area. Abuse in support payments. Now, domestic abuse is a major contributing factor for a lot of families. What happens when you can continue that abuse even once the relationship has dissolved? Former ALP member, MP and actor Terry Norris has passed away. How Murdoch helped Vladimir Putin, and Trump's possible arrest, how we should respond to that. Okay, that is a basic rundown. Let's get on with the show. Now, I don't know how many of you, I better make sure that my phone doesn't ring just before I get too excited, because that's happened twice now. And I don't like it. Turns out I'm a bit of a meanie to people who are trying to get hold of me. So, ALP won the night. And it looks like they've won a majority. But let's have a look at where ABC is sitting. Now, keep in mind, most major networks weren't going to call this until Anthony Green did. So understand that had the most credible electioneering man called it, I don't think they were going to. And this is why the US does try to pick up Anthony Green. He has that many credentials in what he does. And he understands it to a T. So understand that what we're discussing here is fundamentally the thing that he does. This is his wheelhouse. So I trust everything that he says. So let's start there. So here's how we are currently tracking. The New South Wales results look like this. So we're going to refresh that because I don't know when that lasts even. Okay, so 25 to the LNP, 45 to the ALP. which then what's going to end up happening is it should be 50 to ALP at the end, and I think 30 to the LMP. I think that's something I heard on the radio. But in saying that, these are great results. New South Wales, you did the nation proud. How proud? Well, I've got a graphic for that too. So, if you're thinking I'm not proud of this nation, watch this. This is thanks to everyone around the nation. This is you. All that is left, this little shit show of blue, that's it. You have done it federally in every bloody state but one. So pat yourselves on the back, Aussies. You've definitely changed the nation for the better. You are the fighting force. And thank you to people like Friendly Geordies who went out on a massive limb to even be in trouble of his own freedom to play a recording, which clearly showed pork barrelaro moments. I'm now referring to as John Barilaro as pork barrelaro because he refers to himself that. So Google, do you still think he's worth those $760,000 after he gloated that he would like to be referred to as pork barrelaro? I mean, really. The man wears his corruption like a badge of honor. So, Friendly Geordies help flip this state. And even in the smallest idea, we are the most thankful nation that state and federally we have gotten there. So even if we don't think about, because there's going to be talk later on in the night about this trip to China and Dan Andrews' response to that, which is also interesting that they're going to call out the Liberal state even then. So I think there's going to be a lot of good news for the country. There is no way this much red happens and this not be good news. So congratulations, New South Wales. You have now donned the amazing red, which has changed many other states for the better. Thank you. That was an incredible night. I did miss a little bit of it. I was at work for a bit of it. But the moment I come home and I heard Anthony Green call it, I was ecstatic. Okay, the next part. So I got a small view of how Fox News, well, not Fox, Sky News, how they were talking about it. This part I think you're going to love because I tell you now, nothing is as funny as Sky News trying to make it sound like this is an ordinary topic and this isn't weird at all. So this is Chris Kenny, and I think her name is Laura. Not really sure. And it's amazing how weird my voice, how high my voice went just then trying to think of her name. Laura Jays, I think. No, I'm wrong. I'm going to butcher it. And I do this every time with names. I'm horrendous at names. All right, listen to this 2 minutes and how insane. This is why they keep losing. Because they're in a bit of denial about what makes the LNP unelectable. That's the part I need you to understand. They are unelectable.
The thing is that, and the atmosphere is absolutely terrible here, as you can imagine. Normally these events, people come in early, they just straggle in after manning the boxes all day, the booths all day. They're keen to have a drink, swap stories with their colleagues. Tonight it looks like they're arriving for their own funeral, reluctantly turning up here because they know what they're going to see. But the key point here is what we've seen with Liberal parties now right across this country. This fallacy, I've called it out as Paul Murray has, as Peter Clinton has for so long. You can't chase the Greens and the Teal.
See, Chris Kenny still doesn't get it. He thinks that they're chasing the Green and the Teal votes. No, they're actually chasing extremist votes like Pauline Hanson, George Christensen, Craig Kelly, anti-vaxxers. You're going to appeal to crazy. That's not where your freaking base is, you idiot. And stop trying to pretend like climate change isn't a thing. You don't think that amazing red wave was because, You know, you might have had a losing set of strategies, Chris Kenny. You might have misdirected your golden party the wrong way. But sure, this is great for ALP. Keep running these lines. Keep the extremists in your party, and we'll see where it gets you next election cycle.
And the Labor Party to the left try and replicate their policies, you actually have to have some
Oh, dear God.
points of difference. You have to stand for your own values.
Sure, but
this is what happens when you get
I
dodgy.
did have a point.
They gave up.
Oh, my gosh. It's not.
They gave up on net zero and energy.
Mate,
They don't,
what do you expect a Liberal state
they're
premier
not
to do
interested in
when
affordable,
at a
reliable
federal
energy.
when at a federal level the
My point is
coalition?
federal and
Yeah, but
state.
what do you expect a Liberal premier to do then when at a federal level their Liberal colleagues have got bipartisanship with Labor on net zero?
People want to vote Liberal.
States can't go alone on energy.
People, the mainstream voters, want to vote for a Liberal Party that believes in small government, low taxes, affordable.
Small government and low taxes. Are they really trying to push Reaganomics big enough to drown in a bath? Oh my God. They are really this stupid. This is beyond contempt for their own voters, that they don't even understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to keep the Reaganomics view alive, which is definitely being debunked every election cycle. It doesn't work. Your weird freaking trickle down economics is a failure, Chris Kenny. But sure, keep telling your people that are watching this. This is how the LNP will get elected. This is for sure what they all should be watching, so the ALP keep winning.
Reliable
Sure.
energy,
Okay.
not endless handouts.
But the
and
Liberal
net zero.
Party in New South Wales has always also got to realise that they also need the millennials. I mean, they've got the boomers and sending out a John Howard. God bless John Howard. I think he's brilliant and he is so sharp and on a campaign. To watch him work a room is absolutely incredible. But the boomers aren't the problem. So sending out
The boomers aren't a problem. I would say that they bloody were. They definitely voted against them too. So this fallacy that they've just got all the older people locked out is wrong. That's not true either.
a John Howard video message and a pamphlet in the last week of the campaign is not going to get you the
I
votes where
think
they
plenty
need
of
it.
boomers were a problem today. I think plenty of boomers
Did you?
gave their first preference to One Nation and their preferences went back
but
to the
look at
Liberal
what's
Party.
happening with the Teals as well.
Boomers gave their votes to One Nation, Chris Kenny declares. If they did, any boomers out there or anyone voting One Nation, I wouldn't want you to be an ALP voter anyway. Split your bloody vote along your weird party lines of, look, I just wanted to go further racist down the line. You know, be weird about it. Why not? Because that's the intent and that's what they got.
Shit on the right. On the right is where they've lost it here, and it's something out the state.
Or perhaps that the moderates might just, give the Liberal Party a rump in opposition. So you've got to look at that. And the question.
See, they really are that out of touch. They don't have a damn clue. But the part that upsets me about this is it's the idea that this is how they assume that doing the same old thing will win them over. Look, if that's their strategy, have at it. It's not a winner. Clearly, how many times do they have to lose before they figure that one out? That's up to Rupert Murdoch to decide how to get his next man. And trust me, it'll be a man. It won't be a woman because they're not interested in promoting women or women's rights or anything that looks remotely logical. That's not how this thing works. How this thing works is fundamentally they want to find a man that will slap on a blue tie like they did for Tony Abbott. And Rupert Murdoch's admitted to all of this stuff. This isn't like projection. No. This is actual statements that they've put out there that they know is that Next, I want to talk about robo-debt. Now, I know that we have discussed it ad nauseum here, and no doubt a lot of people are like, why are you still discussing that? Here's why. Robo-debt had one of the most devastating effects as a policy I've ever seen. You know, it's just as devastating as what they did with the pandemic. It's on par with that. Only this was like just to attack the poor. And next to nothing will be done for this. So if I seem a little bit like a bull in a china shop on this deal, it's because I'm feeling like a bull in a china shop on it. It's horrendously a bad idea what they did with robo-debt, and they're not done doing it. So let's have a look at this response. Bill Shorten to Peter Dutton in response to the robo-debt saga. He thought it would go away quietly, and it hasn't.
After Jared's death, Kath wrote to various politicians, including the then Prime Minister, the member for Cook, and the then Minister for Government Services, the member for Fadden. She says she's never heard back from them. Not even a sorry for your loss, she says. Jennifer Miller, another bereaved mother of robo-debt, in her evidence to Royal Commission, talked about her son Reese. Reese was creative, he was artistic. Jenny has said that she hopes that this Royal Commission sets up a precedent, that if you're working in public office, you're there to work for the people. So do your job and do it properly. She's also noted that throughout robo-debt, it all became very sly and just everyone was lying and covering each other's backs, and it was just really both heartbreaking but also vindicating, seeing that we've been able to get the truth out there for Reese. This Royal Commission is not a witch hunt, Leader of the Opposition. It's tearing down the walls of legal professional privilege and the inner workings of the former government. There has been courage and leadership and ethics on display in this Royal Commission. It's just not been the ministers and the senior public servants. This is an examination of the worst abuse of Australian citizens committed deliberately. There's been no legal argument advanced to defend it, no moral argument. Thank goodness we're having this robo-debt Royal Commission.
So on that note, I want to thank Bill Shorten for not letting it die. The idea that robo-debt is over just because the Royal Commission is, and just wait for the report, is, to me, not doing it justice. We need to keep discussing where robo-debt fitted in so many lives. The deaths were terrible, but there were more than just the deaths. This broke families. This caused homelessness. This caused kids to go hungry. What they did was more than just creating robo-debt. They created an unfair system of attacking people who did not have the means to fight back. And it truly, if any time that you feel that the public was ignored, it's around how we treat our welfare recipients. We need a calm and measured response to something like this. Bill Shorten has been nothing but class. And you can see the anger in his eyes as he's talking about the overwhelming damage robo-debt did. I have to say, it's not just commendable to hear what he says. It's commendable to see what I'm seeing from him. It's impressive for so many reasons. But let me tell you, the thing that sticks out at me the most is the reason that a lot of us understand what robo-debt did is because of Bill Shorten. And I want to congratulate him and his amazing legal team and the amazing ability to push for a Royal Commission. Thank you, Bill Shorten, the Prime Minister we've been deprived of having. And I'm immensely proud to see you on the Albanese team helping ALP be the strongest party it can be. Okay, next one, to a very serious topic. So recently on the page, I showed you a war criminal. Now, there was a couple of unhelpful comments. What this man had done is a crime, and it should be. We can't enter places and think that we enter their places and think that we have a right to just kill whoever we want, to damn with the Geneva Convention on how it works. No, I'm sorry. There are rules, and if you're not willing to play fair, I'm not willing to play at all. We deserve better than what we're looking at right now. You know, and there should be more coming to light as of this. He isn't the only one that has faced repercussions for this kind of act. SAS veteran Oliver Schiltz charged with war crime under murder of killing an Afghani man in a field. A decorated former SAS soldier in a four-corner story shooting an Afghan man in a wheat field has become the first Australian serviceman or veteran to be charged with a war crime under Australian law. So understand that this is unprecedented. You won't find that as many wars that we've been involved in, we rarely take action, and rarely is it captured in real time what happened here. But now we're seeing just that. The former trooper, Oliver Schiltz, 41, was arrested by the Australian Federal Police at Jindabyne in New South Wales Snowy Mountains this morning, after a years-long investigation into the alleged war crimes in Afghanistan. In a statement, the AFP said it would allege that he murdered an Afghan man while deployed in Afghanistan with the Defence Force, the ADF. Mr. Schultz has been charged with war crimes of murder underneath the Commonwealth Criminal Code. His case was mentioned in a Cuban local court this afternoon, whereby his solicitor made no application for bail. He has been remanded in custody to appear at Sydney's Downing Centre local court on May 16. His charge, the ABC understands, relate to the shooting of an Afghan man, Dad Muhammad, during an ADF raid in 2012. Ugurzin province. See, names are not my friend, in southern Afghanistan. The killing was revealed in March of 2020 by ABC's Four Corners program, which the broadcast footage showing Mr. Schultz shooting Mr. Muhammad while the Afghan man lay on the ground. The case could set international precedent for legal experts. If found guilty, Mr. Schultz could face life in prison. His arrest makes a historic shift response to suspend military wrongdoing in both Australia and amongst Western allies who have avoided holding their war crime trials in civilian courts, according to international law expert. It's unprecedented, said the University of Tasmania law professor Tim McCormack, a special advisor on war crimes to the prosecutor of International Crime Court Commission, the ICC in The Hague. We've never had a situation in the past where members of the ADF, either current or former, has been charged with a war crime and slated for a trial in a civilian court. I suspect that this will be an important precedent for the British, for the Canadians and the New Zealanders, hopefully other state parties to the ICC. Now, notice that America is not mentioned there, That's thanks to Trump. He unceremoniously decided he no longer wanted the United States attached to, held accountability to what he was up to with Ukraine and other places, Russia and Saudi Arabia, and and the USA is questionable at best. I think they overfund things, so they're not held accountable. Mr. Schultz was awarded the Commendation of Gallantry for his service in Afghanistan, where he completed multiple tours. He was stood down by the ADF after the killing was revealed by an ABC investigation and Four Corners. So ABC essentially broke this story. Understand that this is when it had credibility, when the LNP hadn't gone all out to destroy whatever it is and however they wanted to do it, where they just sort of went from Michelle Guthrie, which was already fairly right-leaning, to all the way to Ida Buttrose that literally campaigns with the Liberal Party. Yeah, and David Spears hosting insiders. Killed man was father of 2 young girls. The Four Corners program, Killing Field, broadcasts an explorative footage taken from a helmet camera worn by a dog handler from Mr. Schultz's patrol. It shows an SAS dog mauling Mr. Muhammad in a field before the dog is called off, and Mr. Schultz is seen training his weapon on the man. Mr. Muhammad, a father of 2, in his 20s from the village of Diwazi Hassanazi, Four Corners has identified the dead man and tracked down his brother during the investigation. They can arrest him. His father, Abdul Malik, told the program in 2020. Why did they have to kill him? He was married and had 2 daughters, said Muhammad's brother, Jemshid. The youngest was about a month old and the other was 3 years old at the time. Four Corners also revealed that the ADF investigated the killing for months after the 2012 incident, following the complaints from the Afghan villagers. However, ADF investigators cleared Mr. Schultz after being told Muhammad had been tactically maneuvering and was carrying a radio and had been shot in self-defense. See, they make it sound like that's a bad thing, like carrying a radio is like bad. How, like that's the criminal offense. Let's kill him because he might have had a radio. After Four Corners story, the incident broadcasts around the world. The then Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, described it as shocking and alarming, and then Defence Minister Linda Reynolds referred to the incident to the AFP for investigation. That investigation was later taken over by the Office of Special Investigator, the OSI, the body set up to probe alleged war crimes after the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force inquiry, which was led by Paul Brenton, an Army Reserve Major General and New South Wales Supreme Court judge. The Brenton inquiry handed down its findings in November 2020, recommending that 23 incidents and 19 individuals to be referred to for further investigation by the police. That inquiry recommended that any alleged war crime should be prosecuted in a civilian court, criminal court, and in a trial by jury rather than military tribunal. During the Senate estimates hearing in February, Director General of the OSI, Chris Morazes, said that the agency was investigating between 40 and 50 alleged offences. Attorney General's consent is required for the prosecution. So that's happening, and these things are a slow process. So don't expect to hear something tomorrow where it's all done and dusted and concluded. Investigations take time. While we like to think that police and other law enforcement agencies are just waiting, no, what they're actually doing is getting all the relevant evidence to make what they think happened stick in the best possible way. It's up to the DPP bringing that case to make it look like the clearest picture possible, so there's no doubt in either the judge or the jury's mind about what happened here. So that's happening. Next, I want to talk about Christian fundamentalists and the TERFS. These TERFs are women that say that they're pro-women, but they're definitely not pro-women when they're anti-trans women, when they're anti-women having their own voice heard, when they stranglehold another woman from speaking, and along with Christian fundamentalism and Nazism, riding hand in hand with this particular movement. Now, last week I showed you the organizer of the TERFs and the Nazis and the Christian fundamentalists all interacting at a rally, friendly, shaking hands, saying hello, using the same signage as one another. That's going to be an important factor here. Now, why do I find that important? Here's why. When you're looking at the Christian fundamentalism, you need to understand that they purport to be all about God and what God would have wanted. Let me tell you, if you're going to use a very loving and charitable God as to be your crusade, so to speak, in terms of shunning other people, that's not how this works. You don't get to be judged, jury, and executioner of anyone's lifestyle. So before there's anyone here that makes an inappropriate comment about how I shouldn't be telling them how they should be living within these Christian fundamentalist groups, understand that the whole point of Christian fundamentalism is to tell people how to live. So if you don't like it, probably disagree with the organization that you're fundamentally in, and I'll back the hell up. Deal? Because this is a war you started. Just understand, the ball was in your court to end this a long time ago. But we have dealt with kindness of your ridiculous notion. We've tried education. We've tried to play this game where we understand one another, where we have this meeting of the minds. But no, you just got sneaky about your lies. And you would gaslight your people into thinking that they're the perpetual victims of every freaking scenario. Done with you. Done with you. We're not negotiating with you terroristic type views. This is no longer negotiable. If you're part of a Christian fundamentalism, and keep in mind, regular Christians are perfect angels. They do not walk around telling my family how they should live. They're not telling my child if they are gay or using a different pronoun that it's offensive. They let people live how they want to live, so long as they're walking their truth with their God. They're happy to spread the good message of God. They're not happy with the fire and brimstone of the whole thing. They're just happy to share God's love, the regular Christians. What you're doing as Christian fundamentalists is dangerous, and it creates extremeness that created events like January 6th and many other violent events. Understand that in the name of war, religion has always come up. So I would suggest that if your point to religion is to not be violent, use that as your banner. Because I'm done hearing about how something's been ripped away from you. I don't care if you pray to a unicorn, as long as you're not trying to tell me how I want to live. And that's what you did. And I'm not going to muck around with this. This is now the time that you hear that it's important to know people are getting sick of what you're doing. Okay, so let's get to the fun part of this and the actual rise in violence around this. Okay. Time to rise. Christian activists charged after protest violence. Of course there was. Police are monitoring a militant religious group after tensions over LGBTQ rights erupted into a violent attack. Pro-trans protesters. One fringe leader said that they should be dragged by their hair away from the South Sydney Catholic Church. Local officers state that the detectives are examining footage of Tuesday night's attack and identified leaders of the mob who pelted 15 protesters from the Community Action for Rainbow Rights with rocks and glass ahead of another potential clash on Sunday. Yeah. You look like a nice fellow, don't you? Nice and calm. You know, the kind of guy that you're like, no, he's the good Christian. No, you look like an angry young man that has not understood the difference between God is love and God is nothing like you describe. Christian activism and activist Christian Sucker was arrested and charged with encouraging the commission of crimes after he allegedly posted a video on social media on Monday night calling real boys to shake the protesters up and drag them by their hair. Yeah, that's the sort of guy that, you know, you'd want your family to be friends with. He's among 3 people who have been charged by the police over the violence on Wednesday night. Police charged a 42-year-old from Moorebank with assaulting a police officer and hindering and resisting an officer in the execution of duty. The LGBTQ protesters who did not want to be named did not want to be named because they feared for their safety and were ambushed when they arrived to object to One Nation leader Mark Latham's address on the parental rights at St. Michael's in Belfield. In other words, the serial assaulter, you know, not just a taxi cab man, but, you know, he has this amazing ability to be this vile creature wherever he goes, Mark Latham. He's a bitter old man, tries to tell people what they think how they should live. And somehow this 0.7% of a voting has gotten him this unusual position. Police sources speaking to the condition of anonymity said that they have been watching the tensions rise and since the funeral of Cardinal George Pell. I'm not going to call him anything great because we know that his conviction was not quashed based upon anything against the evidence. It was purely based upon a technicality. So to me, no, I think that he was charged and rightly convicted, and now he's dead in the ground. So, hooray, you know, no crying over spilt milk. Take a look at
yearning for the tastes of Europe to
violent this thing was. This was no hi-bye kind of thing. This was violent and brutal and everything that it just shouldn't have been. I don't understand how they get away.
A woman punched in the face as riot police struggle to hold back an angry crowd. Margaret Street in Belfield. 15 protesters from the group Community Action for Rainbow Rights.
Please get us out of here. Please get us out of here.
Swamped by men claiming to represent Christian beliefs.
We hadn't even got our banners and placards out yet. People were badly hurt. People were punched in the mouth, in the face.
LGBTI plus protesters targeting a planned speech by One Nation's Mark Latham about religious freedom and parental rights at St. Michael's Church on the ground.
Let me save 9 years a bit of fluff on that. What it basically is hate. He went to a church to spread hate. He's not a normal human.
Grounds of St. Michael's Primary School.
The people who engaged in violence weren't representative of the Christian community here.
I was inside.
we're praying.
But mass fallout after mass.
I didn't organise the meeting. I was invited along. Any violence at a political meeting is unfortunate, inappropriate, to be condemned.
2 men are...
He's a liar, and he knows precisely the type of people he's inciting. If he's not pro this violence, then he will stand there and make sure that he calls out their name, tells them to never return, and says they're not part of him. But he won't do that because he knows that he's thriving off this. This is what one nation is. It's hate and disgusting.
Arrested and charged, one of them, Christian Suka.
This type of violence is not to be tolerated by New South Wales Police.
And while no one here at St Michael's is claiming responsibility, Mark Latham does have support. Come Saturday, the politician poised for a potential power grab in the upper house, when One Nation's 2 seats could grow to a commanding 5.
I said to them...
yeah, and I don't think it did any of those things, but sure. Keep boosting and pumping that idiot's tyres.
when you leave here, keep your hands to yourself. No violence.
But campaigning on policies like banning transgender education in schools.
Yeah, hey.
For weeks, months and years, Mark Latham has whipped these thugs into a violent frenzy.
Are gay people welcome in this neighbourhood? Tonight, police promising more arrests, protesters on both sides promising more to come.
April 28th! Save the date!
Ruth Wynne-Williams, 9 News.
Yeah, that's why we need to deal with what these people are doing. They're violent thugs, and Mark Latham definitely stirred them up into what that turned into. So we're not done yet in having this discussion. We are going to talk about another little disgusting woman. Oh, geez, we pulled up the wrong one. Okay. Posey Parker. She went to Melbourne and she incited her own little crappy show here. But New Zealand wasn't going to take this part laying down. Take a look at how it went for her in New Zealand.
Building a better future.
Oh, God. Yeah, they didn't receive her quite as well as what she would have liked. Now, when she went over there, from Melbourne to there, now she's not telling anyone where she's going to go because of it.
Helped spark the Liberal, and the woman who helped spark the Liberal unrest has been left red-faced in New Zealand, where she was sprayed with tomato sauce by an angry crowd of protesters. Thousands rallied against the anti-transgender campaigner Kelly J. Keane-Minchell in Auckland today, putting the rest of her tour across the Tasman in doubt.
Building a better future
is a
responsibility we all share.
That was her intent. Her intent wasn't to go there and say nice things. It was designed to go there and be just a horrible human. And I'm not shocked that they do it. I'm shocked that they think that they're not there to do it. And we should be disgusted at her behaviour. Looking at these rallies and then seeing how Mark Latham was trying to piggyback off those protests, and then to see how violent that erupted in the earlier piece, that's just another sign that they're just out of lockstep. And it's wonderful to see that the country rejects this as a whole. For instance, Mark Latham only received as a first preference vote 0.7 in his election ballot covering. Okay, so next I want to talk to you about hold on. Sarah Henderson apparently got a little bit upset this week. Now, I better quickly. Normally I'm all prepared with this, but today had a little element to it. And I found this at the last minute, And now my keyboard is deciding to fall. So, yay me. This is what happens when disorganization meets my home. Okay. Stabilized, because I can't use you unless you're stable. Okay. All right. 1 sec. Okay, so Sarah Henderson had this really bizarre moment in Parliament. Now, I don't know if you got a chance to see it, but I've got to tell you, this one was one of those weird crocodile tears that I've seen on a lot of Liberal MPs, but it had this part where I couldn't help but laugh a little. So she was called out in text messages in supporting Moira Deeming with her anti-trans views and that sort of thing. ALP was not going to take that laying down. So take a look at how that was responded to. Okay, so I'm going to pull it up because my video, my keyboard's still too low. All right, here we go.
President, Senator Watt said the most disgraceful thing, and he's to withdraw it. I am disgusted in you.
Thank you, Senator Senator Henderson. I did not hear the remark, but in the interests of the Senate, I'm going to ask you to withdraw.
Madam President, I withdraw. I refer to the text messages that Senator Henderson said. That's what I said. I withdraw.
Thank you. Thank you. Order. Order. I think we just need to take a moment.
So let's have a look at her face again. That is because they were like, hey, we're just referring to the text messages you sent. And that's the response that she had, crying like a 4-year-old. Like, no, I didn't want that cookie. Oh my God. It's almost classical. Like when you hear that and she even has that same tone. Listen.
What said the most disgraceful thing? And he's to withdraw it.
You gotta say sorry because he said that I sent text messages that I really did. It's weird. These people are weird. I don't know where they come from. I'm amazed that they didn't do one of them weird walkouts where they have Bridget McKenzie and a whole bunch of other Liberal women walking out with her defending this diatribe of whatever this is, 4-year-old, I don't like you stomping my feet kind of moment. Is this really what you want Parliament House to be? The 4-year-old, you said mean things. No, telling you that text messages that you sent is not bullying. And having to withdraw it is even weirder. They're like, no, I just said, you sent text messages. These people are ridiculous. Just understand that I do not think that we're dealing with adults when I see things like that. Tell me in the comments if you think that this is the most adult behaviour you've seen in Parliament House. I mean, come on, I know ALP have got, they're in charge of things, but how did they let that go on for so long? That was way too long. They should not have indulged her. I would have been like, no, cut her mic. She's like a 4-year-old. But that's me. I do not have the same responses to that. I can't believe that she did it. Reminds me of my youngest when she, yeah, that's exactly it. My little girl did that same little, but I didn't, Mummy. I don't understand how you can be in Parliament House doing that. It's bizarre. They are just really strange people. We have to put up with this. Your vote matters when the people like that make it to the Senate and the House. So keep in mind, I'm watching how you vote purely on that kind of representation. Like I said before, Mark Latham is your representative. Whether you voted for him or not is irrelevant. Somebody voted for that. And I can call it 0.7%, but that's still a large amount of people who went and voted for an idiot like Pauline Hanson. How the hell does she get a seat? Whether it's on preferences or not. Something went really awry when these people were allowed to be in the highest, most privileged job ever. And then you've got little Miss, I'm going to cry about it. No, I'm going to pull up her face as I do it. When this is the end result. So I congratulate New South Wales for its efforts and the rest of the nation. And the only place that we've got left is Tasmania. But there are still a few voting pockets that we need to address. The ones where 4-year-olds are still in control of some really big things. So let's put on our big girl and big boy pants, or however you want to identify pants, and let's do this properly. You know, it was so bizarre. I don't know what to make of it. Yeah, my littlest is 17 this year, and I haven't seen a behavior like that since she was really little, you know, so yeah, he really is. Latham is the Benedict Arnold of politics in this country. And you have a look and you can see the dynamics of like how Pauline Hanson sort of amplified people like Trump too. She did meet with him before he became president, and he did see a lot of her like promotion. Rupert Murdoch was promoting her a hell of a lot, and even on Channel 9 that they were giving her like major slots. It's not until she said the most racist thing you could possibly imagine, had it go to air. They're supposed to have like a 30-second time delay or something, and that all went out the window. They let it air. And then they're like, oh, yeah, okay, our bad, we shouldn't have her on air anymore. So now they use Mark Latham. And what they're trying to do is put glitter on shit and still make it sound like acceptable shit. No, it's still shit. Don't try and glitterize it with Mark Latham. Mark Latham is just as stupid and just as rabid as all of them, in my opinion. That doesn't make me right. It just means that's where I'm at. Okay, so Dan Andrews had this amazing moment. Now, I don't know if you've seen him. He has like this amazing gotcha thing. He and Albo do this so well. You just sit there and then you go, oh, you've thought about this for way too long. I never am this quick off the mark, but Albo and Dan Andrews nail it every time. Okay, check out this. Throwing shade after the election.
You mentioned that the Prime Minister was supportive of the trip.
Yep.
How so?
Well, I told him I was going.
Oh, damn. This is a busy time for internet.
And he said, that's fantastic.
My internet is not fantastic right now. Oh, my gosh. 1 second. Sorry about the delay.
And then other premiers around the table at the Lodge indicated that they're planning to go too. But I'll let them make their own announcements.
Are any of them Liberal premiers?
There's not too many of them left, is there? So there's only one of them left. So for fear of identifying potentially.
Hold on. We'll start that again because it glitched a little bit and you didn't get to see the important part to that because it's stupid buffering.
You mentioned that the Prime Minister was supportive of the trip.
Yep.
How so?
Well, I told him I was going and he said, that's fantastic.
Oh, this is about going to China. It's a 30-second clip and it's still not going to give it to me nicely.
And then other premiers around the table at the Lodge indicated that they're planning to go too. But I'll let them make their own announcements.
Are any of them Liberal premiers?
There's not too many of them left, is there? So there's only one of them left. So for fear of identifying potentially one of them, I really can't answer that.
That is such a Dan Andrews call. I'm not surprised that he's like, there's not too many Liberal premiers left. So if you're worried about naming him, you know, it's amazing how quick they are. So as usual, Dan Andrews nails it. Now, after much talk about these secret ministries, there's now talk about legislating around what they did. What I'd like to see this moment be amplified with actual criminality that I think it was, because I think he did some pretty sneaky things with this secret ministries. Apparently, that's not how we do things. We do things like we write legislation to prevent further actions like this. So take a look at this presentation of a new law around this. So, okay, laws to stop secret ministries ignite freedom referendum debate. The scariest ministry saga of the Morrison government could have been avoided if the head of the state was accountable to the Australian people rather than to its crown, the Republic minister says. So this is basically to reignite, should we have the Queen or shouldn't we? In other words, the oversight would have been better if it wasn't the Queen that was or King now overseeing something this big. When you're having this Republic debate, why can't we have several things on this referendum ticket anyway? What's to say that you can't have the Republic referendum, the Voice to Australia referendum, and anything else that really you could fundamentally, and it would save a lot of money too if you're like doubling on these issues. I'm not sure what it looks like without the Queen running things. Like, I don't know if that means that we have an instant president. I don't know what that means for the Commonwealth agreements. Like, I don't know what it means. I just know that I definitely don't want someone in Britain, like last week I showed you the British Embassy's response to this, and they said that it appears that Australia is finally acting grown up about its decision around the $5 note, wanting to use an Indigenous person rather than using King Charles's. So I think that this goes along that same vein in terms of leadership and what happens within our borders of our democracy. I don't think I no longer think it's required that we have this discussion with England about how we do our democracy. I think we're no longer this fledgling nation that's not able to handle its own elections and that sort of thing. While I think that will fundamentally change the Constitution, I'm also concerned that the kind of power that this holds, while I'm happy with the leadership that we have now, there won't always be a time where I feel comfortable with that. We still have some very stupid voters. While I'm very pleased to see the election results of last night and around the country, all except for Tasmania, understand that these times aren't always concurrent. And I think I have this debate in my mind about it's better than the devil that you know. Like, don't mess with something that hasn't broken our democracy yet. This could have, though. This secret ministries could have. But on the other hand, what does it look like if we have a president? Could we have a Trump incident, for instance? Like, what happens if it turns into a presidential run? Will it mean that the idea of only having one of two parties that can actually lead, and then you could have like a third option? And yes, I always go to the worst case scenario. What if it turned out to be someone like Pauline Hanson? That's the fear that I have, that we have too many crazy side little parties where they could be given an option. See, at this rate, the Liberals get to be extreme and they get to find someone stupid. But at least it's only a fight between someone stupid and someone reasonable. If you open up that field, you could be opening up to 50 stupid people and then one reasonable, or two if it's a green or a teal, possibly. But keep in mind that there are, for every 3 that we might have, that there's 50 on that side that I'm deeply, deeply troubled by. For instance, do you know that there's a party called the New Liberals and that they're rather disturbing? They've engaged me on several times trying to pretend like they're like this reinvigorated or what the Liberal Party should have been. And I've had intense discussions with them. And I've thought, what would happen if they literally gained power? So let's have a look at what would change in light of that secret ministries. The federal Parliament is debating new laws proposed by the Albanese government to stop secret ministries' appointment to ministries. The laws were proposed after it emerged that the Prime Minister Scott Morrison appointed himself Minister of Health, Finance, Industry, Science, Energy, Resources, Treasury, and Home Affairs in 2020 and 2021. Keep in mind, a few of these are really, really big parts. For instance, I don't know how many people were paying attention in 2018. 2018 had this really funny time where Peter Dutton was after this huge power grab, and he got this thing called a super ministry. So when we're saying home affairs, we're talking about things like to do with the AFP and other branches of law enforcement. And what he was able to do was quite frightening. He was essentially the one overseer of all of these 7 branches. And it was called this super ministry. And this was done to placate Peter Dutton into being very nice to Scott Morrison. The British Empire was finished a long time ago. Italy and Israel are worrying, when will we talk about a republic? That's the concern. I'm happy to read out any comments that you have that can educate me further on this, because I'm not really sure what it looks like. Like, if we have a president, what does that look like? Does it look like it just like the field just opens up and then they do what we do in America, what they do in America, where it primaries out and then you pick a leader of the party that way. And you then have to nominate the party that you're going to vote for. I don't know if many people know this, but to vote for who is going to be leader of a particular party in the States, you have to be registered to that party. Like, that's the other thing. Like, there's a lot of moving parts to this. Would we need to adapt to the same idea? That's what I'm trying to understand. How much of this do we take from the Americans, or do we still keep the Westminster system? Like, what does that look like? I know I'm not a constitutionalist, so I'm not really sure how that looks. Would everyone have to be registered to a party? I know that Americans do have what they call independents, but they don't get to pick the leader of their party. It's just when the presidential election comes up, they get to pick for the last one, for instance, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So that would create another dynamic within itself. What would happen with gerrymandering? So we already know that the Liberal Party do attempt drawing out lines of election maps, and the AEC has already been leaning very much in favour of the Liberals. What happens if you take away those barriers of the AEC and get rid of the Westminster system, much like what Trump did? He essentially created like this massive gerrymandered system in very red states that were able to do some pretty awful things. The great part is that he still lost. So, but Republicans don't ever really have to win a majority. They have to win electoral college points, which is another point within itself. Would we adopt an electoral college, or would it just go by what state voted which way? I'm not really sure what it looks like if we go the Republic way. I'd be interested to see how that one played out. I think that there's a lot of debate on how we would do it, whether we would adopt the US way of seeking presidency. For instance, France has a very similar method to the US, which it took me a little bit to understand how Marine Le Pen was in control of the very right-wing section of that while Emmanuel Macron was elected leader of his party and that sort of thing. Like, their system is very adjacent to how the Americans do it. So I think it's a very interesting debate to have. Okay, so it said here that he did so without the knowledge of most of his coalition colleagues. So Scott Morrison, in doing what he did, he was even able to deceive his own people. So how would being a republic prevent that? There are already laws now that should have prevented this. I don't understand. This is the other thing that watching the Trump crime thing go on, is that we've always considered that our leaders would not be so stupid to commit a crime. We've always considered it a bit of a honor code, like don't do something that's stupid, like don't bribe Ukraine into, you know, a position where they're tipping their hat for you, or don't swing the courts in your favor where, you know, you bump up the Supreme Court, or don't, you know, if you say he was playing the game of heads I win, tails you lose kind of thing. Like, I'll only admit how the results were if I win, but if I lose, I get to say it's rigged. And then January 6th happened. You know, I don't know if being a republic could fill in all the sand gaps that I see swallowing it whole. It's not something I'm very educated on. And I don't know how we could really close this. We've always had this handshake kind of deal with whoever runs the country. Okay, just don't be like too much of a, you know, a bad person. Don't do bad things. We're electing you to sort of just be decent human. There really aren't a lot of laws around the governing body of the Prime Minister. And that's quite concerning. The US is sort of trying to play this catch-up game too, of they're like, hold on, we were doing this, you know, based upon good men being elected. And at the time when it was written, it was purely men. So when I'm saying to you, good men being elected, that's because that's how it's written. That's not my words, that's their words. So they're saying they believe that only good men would have been elected. But I challenge you on that. And we need to stop telling people anyone can be prime minister or president. Trump is the poster child for, yeah, sure, anyone could be president, but it's probably not a good idea. You know? And I think Scott Morrison was erring on the side of that too. If you have a look at the Scott Morrison ethos, you got to look at it. He was like this secret ministry thing. Kind of reminded me a bit of how Trump was getting like his children to be like part of the COVID envoy, and they got no experience with that. And then you had Ivanka Trump, you know, in part of foreign policy and just really bizarre things. Like, I remember there was one meeting that Ivanka Trump had with Angela Merkel, leader of Germany. And it was all going swimmingly around other elected people. And Ivanka walks over and she just interjects herself and then just starts prattling on about something or rather. And Angela just looks at her like, oh, this is the adult table, honey. Like, the look on her face was stricken. It was unbelievable how quick Trump could make a job that's so prestigious look like a third world country being run. It was horrendously awful. And it hasn't gotten better really since then. I had a lot of hope in Biden, but I don't know, red states are really showing me how, and the Supreme Court is showing me how awful things can really be. Okay, and that's why I'm sort of iffy on if the Republic debate is one that's really going to fix this. I've seen countries with presidents be just as evil as someone underneath the Westminster one. although I'm pro the idea that we don't pay England any more royalties for just existing, it's a massive debate. But Assistant Minister for the Republic, Matt Thistlethwaite, believes that the saga could have been avoided had there been an Australian head of state appointed by the Australian people. A head of state put into that situation, such as the one Mr. Morrison left the Governor-General with, would be obligated, in my view, to ensure that the Australian people were informed of the former Prime Minister being sworn into those ministries. Now, this also brings up the appointment of the Governor-General. There should be someone that is not playing partisan politics. They're supposed to be apolitical. And the very fact that it's not is shocking. And it's always like, you never ever see like a left wing do something like crazy in these positions. It's always some right wing nut job that just goes way too far. And then you're like, see, this is why we can't have nice things. And that's the debate that we need to sort of have. Why are we allowing these crazies to hold positions that they just clearly shouldn't? But I mean, it gets a little bit more than that. Mr. Thistlethwaite, to the Governor-General, is appointed as the King or Queen's representative and swears allegiance to the Crown. Now, that's dodgy, to have someone swearing allegiance to the Crown, not actually to Australia, which is another weird system altogether. But I don't know if having... if you abolish the Governor-General, what happens then? Like, is there an oversight of the president like there should have been in the States, where Trump, they got so bad in the United States where they're like, look, we need to have a look at the 25th Amendment. Now, if you remember, Trump had like a dementia test. Now, at this point, that's what the 25th Amendment in the American Constitution does. So while he's walking around doing his man camera TV, weird man woman camera TV thing to see if he can remember things, this is because this was set up by Mike Pence, because he was really going to pull the trigger at this time. And he was like, oh, fuck it. We need to know if he's like a normal human being. And Trump, like an idiot, thinks it's great. You know, a great talking point to go on camera and then go, I passed a dementia test. You know, and you're like, what happened to the United States where you got to the point where your own VP is like, no, you're a little bit crazy right now. You're doing really wild things. Let's get a dementia test. And he's out there going, see, I passed it. There was never any evidence that he passed anything. Because one, as you know, the presidential doctors do not have to tell you crap. They don't. You had that Ronnie Jackson run around telling everyone how Trump is the fittest president ever. I mean, they made a mockery of even presidential doctors. It's weird. But the head of state, he said the head of state appointed or elected by the Australian people would have an obligation to ensure the public knew who was administering the government on behalf of the fundamental principle of democracy. If the Prime Minister were to go on the Australian head of state and say to them, I want you to swear to me, in those ministries, of course, the head of state would be obligated to do so, Mr. Thistlethwaite said. See, I think that that's just semantics. Yeah, I don't think he passes the psychopath test. He's just was that level of crazy. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to Trump. And I don't think if we were to change and have a president, how would we buffer ourselves from a Donald Trump? I think that that's, after watching this great American experiment, as they call it, you're not a fan of the king or queen, but you're definitely not a fan of looking at a Trump person and then going, oh no, we should sign Australia up to that. I mean, I get it. There are other countries that we should model, like, you know, not particularly France right now, but there are like Italy and a few other countries that are independent, and Italy might have a prime minister. There are plenty of countries that do have, like Japan, that have no, they got a prime minister too. I'm really digging my own hole here. That do have presidents that do the right thing. I think in Germany it's a chancellor, so I don't think they call it a president. But I think it's a fair stake in the game that I don't know if changing the republic would change the corruption levels. And I think Trump proved it to me that, yeah, sure, you can say that anyone can do things, but anyone can be president. Doesn't mean they should be. So, and he goes on to say, but if they were appointed by the Australian people, I believe they would also be obligated to say the Prime Minister, if you don't tell the Australian people, then I will. Have you ever known anyone, like the Menindee River thing? They knew what they were doing. They knew that they were killing a whole ecosystem. There were so many people that could have spoken up but didn't. And that's just one of any number, or the Robodebt saga, and many others where they knew that they were doing corrupt things. And no one, there should have been buffers in place for all of it, but there just wasn't. So I'm not sure being a republic really changes that level of corruption. I think I'm a bit of a skeptic, so I kind of need to be sold on what it looks like. Maybe because I'm just not educated on that level of diplomacy, you know, and understanding how it works in the geopolitical sphere. But it is an interesting debate to have. And then when you have a look at it, he goes on to say, when the secret ministries emerged, the Governor-General, David Hurley, was criticised for not instructing Mr. Morrison to make the appointments public. Is there any evidence to suggest that he would have, even if we were a republic? And Trump was doing do you know, Trump being a republic had this obligation. And do you know what he did? He told people, I'm only going to give COVID supplies to the states that are nice to me. Yeah, that's the president. He was like, and he was wheeling and dealing COVID stuff around. And he didn't want to act on it because it first hit blue states. Because he was like, no, this is great. It's killing off the blue states. And then when it started to hit like rural Texas and shit, he was like, oh yeah, maybe I should do something. It's actually killing my people. By that point, it was too off the hook. And then he was like, no, inject bleach into yourselves. He got real weird real quick. And I was like, where is he going with this? And it was so very corrupt. That's why I'm thinking, I don't know if we're coming from a good place here. Can't we just like legislate that you can't just be crimey? You know, can't you sort of tap it down? I'd like to be a republic, but I'd also like there to be like legislation more than a handshake to sort of go, yeah, don't do this stuff. Don't pork barrel. Don't do sports rods. Don't kill off a whole ecosystem kind of thing. Don't be crimey. You know, don't hand out Robodebt letters. I could never have pictured it going that awful. I never, if someone had said to me, they're going to abuse and use welfare recipients to that awful level, I never would have believed that. That was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. But Mr. Thistlethwaite said that the Governor-General was not to blame for the situation Mr. Morrison put him in. Now, I dispute that. The Governor-General is a separate entity of the Prime Minister. At what point, what powers did he not have to say something? That's not what's outlined here to me. I find that a little bit odd, and it's sort of blame shifting, that everything was Scott Morrison's fault. The other thing is, Scott Morrison appointed this fellow. You know, it's another weird moment. Under our system, the Westminster system, the Governor-General acts on the advice of the government of the day, and that is what the Governor-General did, he said. I don't know. I don't know if changing that, I don't know. Convince me. I'm easily corruptible in that idea of I can be persuaded if I understand the wholeness of it. Okay, So this is a different kind of political sort of thing. So there is a doctor that was deliberately making sure that people weren't being misled in from a cancer scammer. And this is political because there should be laws against scammy sort of people. Now, listen to this sort of scam and tell me that this isn't heartbreaking. Oh, here we go. Trouble is with the Republic is a potential loss of regulation and even more open and corruption. It's a hard one going forward. Yeah, that's part of my issue here. It's not, I don't think it's like a catch-all for closing the gaps to things. I just don't. I think if someone is going to be a terrible person, whether we're a republic or not is not a preventative. I think that you kind of need to sort of write this shit down and then go, yeah, don't do this stuff. Like, these are the confines. We can no longer expect that good people are doing this for good intentions. I think that we were persuaded of that because there were a few good leaders, but more than that, even when they weren't good leaders, we were convinced they were. John Howard is one of them pin-up boys for the facade of doing good. It was actually quite bloody evil. And I think that that's the other, you know, look at all of that kind of stuff. So why did my camera go all weird? So let's have a look at this scammer story. And it's linked to a doctor in Melbourne, but an issue in the US, because of course, this is how it works. Potato to treat cancer, how challenging a naturopath prompted $1 million lawsuit. When Dr. Adam Smith decided to accuse a doctor turned naturopath of promoting fresh potato and pixie dust magnesium as cancer treatments. Yeah, fresh potato and pixie dust and magnesium as cancer treatments. He never imagined that he would be slapped with $1 million defamation lawsuit. He thought he was doing a community service, and he is. But no more than 2 years after the Melbourne GP uploaded a series of videos on YouTube debunking the online health claims of Farah Augustin Bunch, a doctor turned naturopath, social media influence, Smith is already out of pocket nearly $600,000 in legal fees. This is one of those stories where you're like horrified that this thing was even able to get off the ground. It's incredible to watch this. He's preparing to fight $1 million defamation case brought against him by the US-based practitioner of Victorian Supreme Court, with a pre-trial hearing beginning this week. He estimates a trial could cost him upwards of $2 million. Now, keep in mind that the US is rife with stuff like this. Alex Jones was hawking something called Silver Solution, along with that Christian fundamentalist guy, and they were selling dodgy things. See, another reason they don't close these gaps in the US of terrible people being able to do terrible things. Well, we have like actual laws around doing it. It has been fairly soul destroying. The 37-year-old said it's been extensive, extremely difficult emotionally, and I can't believe it's escalated to what it has. It has totally ruined my life. In a 358-page of defense documents lodged with the court and seen by the Sunday Age, Smith alleges that the Augustin Bunch, who has more than 3.6 million followers on Facebook, provided dangerous medical advice to seriously ill people overseas. Now, what you're about to hear may disturb you. If you have a weak constitution of any kind, and this story may be upsetting to those who have had a loved one pass away from this particular disease. I want to give that disclosure now because this story gets heart-wrenching. Okay, so just so you know what you're in for. Smith, who has a YouTube channel called Doc Adam, with more than 2 million subscribers, alleges patients died after Augustin Bunch encountered them to follow her supplement-based health protocols. Among a suite of allegations submitted to the court, Smith's Australian commercial law firm Mills Oakley are claims against Augustin Bunch prescribed by one patient various natural remedies she sells online and a carbohydrate-free diet, and discouraged her from using modern medicine. Court documents allege Augustin Bunch reviewed medical records of a woman who had early-stage colon cancer when she visited the naturopath's clinic, diagnosing the woman with stage 4 breast cancer by touching a lump under her chest without undertaking further tests. It is alleged then she recommended the woman blend a fresh potato with clear liquid products, fashion it into a patch, and place the patch on the lumps in her breast and armpit. Now, you know how this is going to end, right? Understand that this is not pretty. The patient later died, according to Smith's defense, lodged with the Supreme Court. Court documents allege the patient's death certificate named the cause as secondary malignant nepo, I can't pronounce that, of the large colon and rectum, among other contributing factors, including breast malignancy. The GP also alleges Augustin Bunch humiliated him at work by organising somebody to come to his clinic and serve him court papers in front of patients in an exchange that was filmed and uploaded to social media. Because this woman isn't just a despicable person selling gimmicks online that is literally killing people. She did her fame thing and got someone to go to his office and serve him papers like the troll she is. She's not out to be helpful. She's out to do harm. The UK-born doctor also claims that Augustin Bunch hired a private investigator who took photographs of his partner outside their home, because these are all normal things to do. I think Pete Evans, and I think 1,000 times worse in the US. Yeah, that's what this is. This is that level of insanity. And Pete Evans just is way crazy. He got into a bit of trouble for his stuff. In another document submitted to the court, Smith claims an ovarian cancer patient followed Augustin Bunch medical advice and used her natural remedies such as vitamin C and cabbage to treat her pain while refusing chemotherapy. Nah, tell me that's not devastating on some level. Oh, see, Eddie, I can't even know. How could she do that? When the woman told Augustin Bunch she was feeling pressure to have chemotherapy, documents submitted to the court the details that the naturopath allegedly told her, don't believe them. They told you that to one of my patients, but she's still alive after 3 years. Documents submitted to the court said that the woman who lived in Dubai later died. And this doctor is fighting this. Understand, he's like, for the love of God, shut it out. How does YouTube and Facebook let this crap go on? Like, don't they have any standards at all? Hell, you can't even put a breastfeeding mum on Facebook. But this woman can do this on Facebook? Like, sure, it's bizarre. People get into trouble for using certain words that aren't even swear words. But sure, she's allowed to tell people that stuff that's literally going to kill them. In documents lodged with the Supreme Court, Augustin Bunch, who described herself on Instagram as a specialist in natural therapies for cancer, diabetes, and other illnesses with 150,000 patients. So now she's treating him as a doctor, patients, and dispute that she made wild and outlandish therapeutic product claims. Yeah, there are organizations that openly dispute where she's coming from, like therapeutic goods and administration team that actively says that what she does harm. Augustin Bunch, who is represented by the Australian law firm Armstrong Legal, because that seems normal. You know, an Australian law firm would want to represent a scam. This all seems normal. Has lodged 90 defamatory claims from 10 videos uploaded by Smith. She alleges her reputation is tarnished and the implications on her family are severe, and she has suffered a loss of damages. What? What? No. She told people to use pixie dust and cabbage to treat cancer, and she's worried about looking crazy. Oh, okay. Seems normal. Her lawyer, Joseph Palama, said in a statement that his client denies Smith's allegations, describing many of them distorted and exaggerated and taken out of context. Okay, what fucking context is it? Is pixie dust? Come on. No. In what possible world can you make pixie dust sound like a cure for cancer? Give it a go. I'm willing to listen. It's a weird thing to... No, How do her lawyers submit that with a straight face? Like, serious? No, you defame my client. She said that she's selling pixie dust. No. I refuse to believe that there is a lawyer this stupid. No, that's ridiculous. The lawyers said Smith's videos created an internet pylon which thousands of people uploaded violent, hateful comments about Augustin Bunch on the website. These included that she's a murderer, an evil whore, and a serial killer, and a witch. Because, you know, we haven't grown from just calling people evil. We need to add the old witch hunt idea. It's a weird statement within itself, but you think the families of the victims aren't after you, lady? I mean, I would be if I knew that my family, and this is a rife with COVID. I had a family member come to me going, I believe COVID is a hoax. And I went, oh, dude, you have two options from this point on. I can either never speak to you again and be quite pleased about that, or two, you don't ever say that batshit crazy thing again. We are no longer speaking because people did this. They brain rotted him from the inside, and it was awful. This wasn't like one incident though. There was like, this wasn't like one offhand comment. No, it was persistent and malignant in our conversations, and it did damage. It was irreparable damage, and I lost a very loving family member to this rabbit hole weirdness. Dr. Smith's social media publications constitute a very personal and relentless attack against Augustin Bunch. Dr. Augustin Bunch. Where is she getting the doctor from? He has essentially alleged, among other serious matters, that Dr. Augustin Bunch is a psychopath and sociopath. The pair have never met. Smith said it alleged in 2020 when he started posting videos online providing general health tips aimed at people in the Philippines as a way to practice the language of his Filipina partner. He soon realized that there was a widespread and unregulated medical misinformation advertising to natural therapies as cures to serious diseases in Southeast Asian countries. That's incredibly devastating. You can't tell me that's not devastating what they did. Well-being and naturopathy are the great scams in the field of health we have ever seen. 21st century snake oil salespeople. Look, I'm not saying that, you know, taking a little bit of vitamin B and fish oil isn't helpful. I'm saying telling people that pixie dust is real and cabbage is going to cure cancer is not a great way to do things. There's a difference between taking a healthy dose of vitamins and minerals to replenish yourself and then using them as actual, like, things like castor oil, you know, as a cure-all. And that was definitely before we had a lot of medical science. Castor oil was used as a wide range cure for a lot of things, which was really bizarre, because the idea is that if you had like a tablespoon of castor oil, you could intake it, and then it would be oiled enough to just go out of your body. I mean, we've had this since the beginning of time. We've called it different things. We've called it quackery. And to me, this is another form of quackery, particularly because she's using the name doctor. That's disturbing to me. So, in my opinion, this is the most batshit thing that I've ever seen. Smith then began making videos debunking what he saw as bogus cures. I never set out to defame anyone. I was just trying to do a good deed. And then he came across the Augustin Bunch Natural Medicine Clinic, and that treated cancer patients, which now has been since shut down. So that's good that she shut down, or is his. So she had a medicine clinic, and they've since shut that clinic down. She's committing obvious health fraud and quackery. It's outrageous. People write to her with questions like, what's the treatment for stage 4 cancer? And she'll just respond with her products like pixie dust and tell them to use vitamin C and garlic. Those are really helpful. Not pixie dust, but garlic and vitamin C are very helpful things, but not to treat cancer. It's a little bit like how ivermectin is a real drug used for real positive things. It treats worms, you know, bugs, infections like that. But what it doesn't do is cure COVID. And you had right-wingers tell people ivermectin was a cure-all. It could just fix everything. Now, and then they started combining that with an actual cure, and that was micro antibodies. This is taking part of the virus and in the bloodstream, and then using it to boost your immune system to sort of help fight off the COVID from other sufferers. And it was a really, really good, it is a good fixture to it, but they were combining that with the ivermectin, and they were claiming it was the ivermectin that was fixing it. And this is part of the disinformation in this field. We need to shut all this down. In a series of videos, Smith took aim at the Philippines-born Augustine Bunch and her online products, which included magnesium branded as pixie dust, which she suggested, my tongue's now tied, could be used to help treat diabetes, hypertension, gastroenteritis, and cancer, along with Boston C. Never heard of that one. A scientific blend of herbs extracts that she recommends as natural treatments of serious illness. Australia's strict defamation laws that led to it being labelled as defamation capital of the world, which has weighed heavily on Smith's mind. Despite having no medico-legal insurance, Smith has funded his entire defence privately, as his indemnity insurer is unable to cover him for defamation lawsuits. Fundraising campaigns have started in Australia and the Philippines to help try pay his mounting legal costs. This is bad. Like, this dude could lose like $2 million for saying, hey, yeah, no, this lady lied to you. Pixie dust isn't a real thing. You can't really use it. You know, and he's the one that gets labeled crazy for calling it out. Like, she sues him. Like, she gets emboldened enough to go, no, I'm actually going to sue him. You know, the thing about a scammer is that they're never ever content to play the one card. They have to tip their hat to see how far that they can get with it. And that's where this thing gets funny, because I think she's going to lose this. But the doctor refused to back down and said he'd hoped that the case would shed light on medical misinformation spreading to the Philippines, where he claims families have been destroyed by the doctor and the alleged misconduct. He said that he intends to call at least 5 of the past patients who he alleged were misled into believing that they could use natural therapies to treat cancer. I don't see myself as any kind of savior, but I want to expose the injustice of it all, Smith said. There is genuinely so many victims in the Philippines that I don't think that they're ever going to get any kind of justice from what happened. The US Food and Drug Administration issued a public warning to August and Bunch in 2021, saying that online products including Boston Sea and Pixie Dust Magnesium were not generally recognized as safe or effective. She was also sent a warning letter from the US health regulator advising them to cease promoting products that are intended for use as drugs in the cure, mitigation, treatment, of prevention of disease. That was a horrifying story. I think that was horrifying. Oh, I don't understand how I got that nuts. Okay, so I think we are close to, okay. Oh. So this is a little bit longer tonight because there was so much going on. There is an IPA talk going on with all the election losses and stuff. They're having genuine discussions. And in those genuine discussions, they're talking about really bizarre things. Now, at first I thought, they're going to come to, they're going to have their come to Jesus moment and then realize what they're doing doesn't work. No, don't be silly. Of course they didn't. Check out what they did do. This is another bizarre moment that they did. Okay. Institute of Public Affairs. This is Rupert Murdoch's baby, by the way. Anti-renewables campaign labelled as bizarre and alarmist and scaremongering. Their anti-renewables campaign, warning of massive job losses in regional New South Wales, has been labelled as inaccurate scaremongering by leading environmental scientists. The Institute of Public Affairs, the IPA, visited regional towns this week in a report warning that 10,000 jobs were at risk in Dubbo and the Central Tablelands due to reckless emission reduction policies. The report arrived at the figure by defining every industry that has CO2 emissions per worker above the national average at risk. Industries deemed at risk under the definition include the entire agricultural sector, all electricity supply workers, and waste collection, treatment and disposal services. So what they did is they went with anything that might have a carbon emission. They would just cut those jobs without giving nuance to what hasn't got a solution and how we will move into making it cleaner and better, but where that job industry can still exist in another way. It's a little bit like telling people that mining jobs, once they're gone, that you can't get other jobs. You can and you will in getting things to build electric cars. Like, they're not the most genius people in the world, these scammers. They cannot help themselves. But, of course, by all means, tell them the wrong information. It seems to help them out in their stupidity. Western Sydney University environmental scientist Ian Wright said that there was highly misleading presentation of the data. That report is a great example of scaremongering. It focuses on fear and accentuates the worst case scenario, Dr. Wright said. It's basically an exploration of looking at a whole industry of estimates. And that's how the IPA operates. It operates on not telling you what it all is and how it will impact in real time. Okay. Then we need to talk about abuse in childcare payments. So I've got it. Here we go. So typically, if you're in a domestically abusive situation, what you do is you leave. But what if your ex had a way of making sure that they could still deprive you of things for your child and use financial abuse at their leisure? That's a very real possibility in countries like ours, where they can abuse the system to the point where they don't have to pay anything. Worse than that, there's really no action to prevent them from doing what they're doing. Child support payments are being used as a weapon to financially abuse ex-partners. Tina, whose name has been changed for privacy reasons, left her husband a couple of years ago. Probably the final straw was a head injury and a hospital admission, she said. While the physical violence had stopped, the financial abuse had not. She's supposed to receive $200 a month in child support payments, but the payments stopped 6 months ago. I'm probably earning half of what he's earning with full-time care of our child. He's contributing nothing, and it's a struggle month to month to pay the bills. Child support is supposed to ensure that the parents share the cost of raising the child, even after separation. This is an abuse that shouldn't exist, but does. And I want to keep in mind that this is fundamentally a type of abuse that has impacts for not just the mother, but for each child. So this effectively rolls on abuse to that child. So that parent should essentially be taken in for child abuse by not providing for that child, because it strangleholds his power or his or her power on that ex-partner. And that's horrendous that happens. A Swinburne University report found that some parents are using it as a weapon to financially abuse their ex-partners. Kay Cook said some parents minimise their income, fail to lodge tax returns, or even threaten to not return children. Child support is one of the few tools that really malicious ex-partners can use in having ongoing control of their ex-partner, explained Professor Cook. Something needs to be done about this. We really don't have enough laws around minimising that particular abuse. So I hope, by and large, that can end. Okay. So, where did that story go? One sec. I think it's gone. I think I accidentally clicked it off and now it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. I don't know how it's gone. That one's gone and I don't know. So pokies are slowly going in regional towns. And I did have a whole thing up for that, but somehow I've clicked it off because I've gone way over time and I shouldn't have. And they are trying to tackle gambling issues for families. And one of the ways that they can do that is this. They can get rid of the pokies because they weren't really making that club and pub much money to begin with, and the upkeep was just too much anyway. And people were putting their whole rent money into them. So they're just slowly taking them out of regional towns and even into some bigger areas. So expect to see less and less of these at your local pub. Sad news. So actor Terry Norris, star of Cop Shop and former Victorian Labor MP, dies at 92. So this gentleman died. Actor and former Victorian Labor MP Terry Norris died at the age of 92. Norris was born in Richmond, working class parents, and had intention of becoming a boilermaker. when he caught the acting bug. He learnt his crafts at Melbourne's Tivoli Theatre before following his footsteps of many contemporaries and moving to Britain. Norris didn't have much luck breaking into TV films in Britain, but he did meet some of the love of his life, fellow actor Julie Blake. Okay, Norris returned to Australia and put his talents to everything from radio, TV, television, and stand-up comedy. He was a familiar face in popular TV dramas like Bellbirds, Matlock Police, and Homicide. Okay, his performance in Cop Shop as a senior sergeant Eric O'Reilly won him a Silver Logie for Best Supporting Actor in 1980. Okay, Norris made an unlikely career change in 1982 and began a stint in Victorian state politics as a Labor member for Noble Park and then in Dandenong. In his maiden speech to Parliament, he noted that his 30-year career as an actor was not ideal preparation for his life as a politician. So that's a very sad passing. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't actually know this gentleman, and it sounds like he did amazing work. All honourable members would agree that there is not much fiction or fantasy to make believe in the daily work of a member of this place, he told Parliament in May 1982. The real world out there is tough, grinding and relentless for many people. So I didn't know him. He would spend 10 years in state parliament, recounting later in the ABC's Talking Heads that it was an eye-opening experience for him. You're confronted by issues which are normally never confronted by. Basically, what I learned about myself was what a very protected and privileged life I had always lived. Norris returned to acting in the mid-1990s and starred alongside wife in 2000 film Innocence. So that's horrible news. Okay, Rupert Murdoch has succeeded in helping Vladimir Putin, and he's got many Republicans to go along with it. And Vladimir Putin for decades has perpetuated this idea that American democracy is super corrupt and that it's rife with issues. And in this amazing overlook, and I don't normally say that about this particular publication, talks about how Murdoch succeeded where Putin failed. Time for a fox hunt. So it's talking about how Rupert Murdoch essentially created this ecosystem of where he would create this alt-right ego that was, you know, if you lost, it was stolen from you, but if you won, you could declare that you won. And this was reminiscent of the 2020 election. People who actively won on their ballot to become a member of either the Senate or the House actively said that they won in their own right. But then on that same ballot, if Donald Trump didn't win, they would say it was stolen. And this was believable, you know, to their whole base. Rupert Murdoch had managed to succeed in creating this massive disinformation campaign that made January 6 possible, and created this whole environment where election integrity seems to be their biggest issue. It isn't. And now with lawsuits, Dominion and Smartmatic taking place, it's hard to believe that we are in an environment where we're now talking about how you count the ballots rather than why Donald Trump was able to get away with saying that heads I win, tails you lose, essentially. That needs to be addressed ASAP, in my opinion. So there's that. Lastly, Trump's arrest, possible arrest. See, what's going to end up happening if he gets arrested? One woman has pointed out how we should respond. This small video will give us an overlook as a great way of outlining how I think we can deal with this in a way that doesn't create further division. Because what's happened is that Rupert Murdoch was able to infiltrate the his base into believing something was rigged and that the election was rigged and that everything was stolen from them. So have a listen to this and tell me what you think.
So it looks like Trump is finally going to be arrested, which is good for justice and the rule of law, but it's going to be hard on America. And for those of us who care about America, we're going to have to be smart about how we respond. Trump is currently priming his audience for his arrest. He recently wrote an all-caps message on Truth Social that said, if he's arrested, people need to protest and take the nation back. The pump Trump is priming is the same one he used when he lost the election, one of grievance and violence. This isn't leadership. It's the weaponization of the American people against one another to the benefit of one man's power. MAGA Republicans are already referring to this as political prosecution, much like they keep trying to rewrite history and call insurrectionists political prisoners. This is why anyone who comes for Trump has to have an airtight case.
So if you're wondering why it's taking so long to indict Trump, this is why. Because the political divide is so large that you can't just simply say, get him, get him. Because remember, he preferenced the whole idea of locking up Hillary Clinton. Now he's not so keen that he did his crimey things that they might actually be coming to arrest him. And you can't have a whole campaign on lock her up, but not me. No, it's a weird twist of fate projection at its finest. It's an incredible sight.
Why indictments felt so slow. Because even if you have an open and shut case, there are still going to be tens of millions of people who can be convinced, despite the evidence, that this is politically motivated. And that is dangerous for our country. We're going to start seeing accountability now, the kind of accountability people have waited for. Because anyone who's been paying attention knows that the 45th president of the United States is a shameless, unrepentant criminal. But between propaganda media, direct marketing, and sitting politicians who lie and make his case for him, there will still be lots of people who question the validity of what's going down. When the ex-president is indicted for mishandling classified documents, inciting the January 6th attack, campaign finance fraud, or his direct attempt to interfere in the election in Georgia, it will be an unprecedented moment in American history. And as much as people will understandably feel relieved and want to take pleasure in seeing justice finally served, I propose this is the exact time to lean into Michelle Obama's "when they go low, we go high." As much as people rightly deserve to celebrate or even justifiably gloat, we should consider taking this as seriously as possible. What this man and his enablers did to our country is a terrible, shameful thing. What this self-serving party and the media and power mongers who shielded and protected this man continue to do to our country is still a viable threat. So if we give the opposition the fodder to hate us even more than they already do, it only plays into their hands. Take our nation back is the same kind of incitement as fight like hell. It's not a request. It's a justification for people to go as far as they need to save what they believe needs to be saved. If Trump is arrested, this country will be at odds. It might even be at arms. And any perceived smug behavior on our parts will only play into the propagandized lies the people called to violence have to hate us, the evil left. We have waited a long time for justice, but I believe it's essential we stay civil, serious, and determined as that justice plays out. This is a sad moment in our country's history. What Trump and his people did to us is devastating. But if we high-five too soon or come off as the arrogant elite they make us out to be, it only plays into the support of anyone who comes after him with the same goals and the same backers. Donald Trump is just one man, a man who I sure as hell hope gets what's coming to him. But he didn't do this alone. And what he represents isn't over when he is. How we, those who believe in democracy, liberty, and the rule of law, play this now will ultimately affect how this plays out later. Obviously, you need to feel however you want to feel. But publicly, I think we should treat it with the gravity it deserves. Give these people nothing to hang their hats on but their own broken dreams and compromised souls.
Okay, I think that outlines it beautifully. But keep in mind, if you're a political savvy sort of person, you will know of a political reporter called Rachel Maddow. She did this amazing outlook now that a commentator has spoke about Richard Nixon. He had a VP called Spiro Agnew. Now, if you've ever got a moment to look up Rachel Maddow, Spiro Agnew, you will find out that it wasn't just Nixon. Much like Trump, he too had a very corrupty kind of thing going on. Like, there was corruption within corruption. It was more than just the breaking into the DNC building. I implore you to have a look at just how awful that was. Keep in mind that Trump had an advisor called Roger Stone. Roger Stone also helped Richard Nixon. Roger Stone also has a tattoo on his back of Richard Nixon. So keep in mind that Trump also made, since the early 80s, a plot to run for president. So this isn't new, that this is just a building on of what Nixon left behind, in my belief. And George Bush was a catalyst for how you could essentially do it and unfurl a mission accomplished banner. If you don't know what I'm talking about with a mission accomplished banner, he basically went into the Iraq war, and before it was even close to over, he was close to an election cycle, and he was like, "No, I'm just gonna tell him I won." He gets on this yacht and he unfurls this banner, and I remember thinking, "What? Are all the men and women coming home now?" And then it got real weird real quick. You know, they did the whole ceremony of it with champagne and everything. If you're wondering what that is, look up George Bush mission accomplished banner that he unfurled. It was extraordinary. That was wag the dog kind of war that was implemented so George Bush would win. And the whole idea is absurd. Since the Vietnam War, the Americans have had this uncanny ability to think that they can fix things. And you look at them and you're like, you guys are just idiots throwing bombs at people. And that's really an understatement to how negligent they are as a nation. It didn't start with Trump, but Trump was essentially a major cock-up of democracy. And he made fun of everybody in doing what he did. Okay, so that would be us tonight. I had a wonderful evening with you. I went a full hour over what I normally do, but I did that because the New South Wales election win, I couldn't let that go without giving that ample time to discuss, along with other things that I already had programmed. So I want to thank you for sticking with me through this wonderful evening. And I hope you have a wonderful evening, and share this around, like it, and make sure people know that I do like to get information out there. Thanks for watching. Bye.